Welcome into another episode of the Raise the Flags reaction show. Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith. We are continuing to roll through this unbelievable documentary, 50 years of Buccaneers football. If you have not watched it, we are going to go today through episodes 7 and 8 of the 10-part docuseries. If you've not seen those, go watch those, then come here. It's on Amazon Prime. Spoilers will abound. So this is where this is us warning you that we are going to talk about all of it. So this is kind of around the stretch that is the hiring of Raheem all the way through the 2020 playoffs. Yeah. So we cover some ground
we sure do.
In these couple episodes here. So just kind of big picture, do you have any first thoughts about it?
Well, I mean, right off the bat, it really is amazing, the sort of crucible of head coaches that this place has been. I mean, it is incredible when you go through it. You know, your Sean McVays and your Kyle Shanahans and your Mike Tomlins and Lovie Smith, and I'm not getting them all.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's a lot of franchises that have that could say that over the last like 30 years, and it's incredible, really. It is. And the other thing was we're going to see early on that with Mark and Raheem, it became clear to them that they needed to have a youth movement, and they said they used those words, youth movement, and that led to the most critical decision was the releasing Derek Brooks, right?
Yep.
And I mean, that was tough,
and
I'm sure it wasn't easy for Mark. Mark had been here through basically Brooks's entire career.
Yeah,
I'm sure he had a lot of affection for him. I'm sure Raheem did too. And so that was a tough decision. It's funny because I remember back then I was doing a series, I think it was called Your Turn, where I got questions from fans and I'd sit down with one of our guys and
ask him. That's cool.
And I had an interview scheduled with Derek Brooks for like the next day, and I ran into Mark and he said, "I heard you had an interview with Derek. I think you probably want to reschedule that."
Ugh.
And that was like the next day.
Heartbreaking.
They released him, and it was such a turning point in franchise history.
Yep, I would agree with that. So yeah, and also right around this time of Raheem, Mark Dominic coming in, part of this youth movement, Gerald McCoy gets drafted. And it's so interesting to see how, man, that first year you win 10 games, you think that's going to be enough.
Race to 10.
Race to 10.
He wasn't wrong, Casey.
Yeah.
If you looked back at that time, if you won 10 games in a 16-game season, you almost always made the playoffs. And the Buccaneers didn't make the playoffs on a third-level tiebreaker. They ended up tied with Green Bay at 10-6, and it wasn't the first tiebreaker. It was like the third tiebreaker, and Green Bay gets in as the 6th seed and then goes all the way to win the Super Bowl. So, I mean, that's how close it was.
So close.
But, the funny thing...
how would that have changed things moving forward,
right? Here we go with the sliding doors again. Yeah. Gerald McCoy, you see him in this episode being quoted as saying, "I learned then how hard it is to make the playoffs." And I felt sad at that moment because he was a rookie. He also got hurt that year, so he didn't play the whole year. He was a rookie, and he says he learned then. And then you think about it, and he never did make the playoffs.
Never got to do it.
I mean, it was so close, and he was right there in that, and he was such a good player for so long for this franchise, and the fact they never got to. And he's such a positive and upbeat guy, and his smile lights up a room. And you don't think of him as any, you don't associate sadness with him. But at that moment, I felt sad when he said that, and thinking, and
he deserved
did happen.
to get to play the playoffs.
He should have been there.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved that I found out the Youngry thing was an accident.
I know, I wrote that down too.
Hilarious. I 100% thought this was on purpose.
I did too.
And I loved that they were willing to admit this, that he was like, not what I meant to say.
But it was with Warren Sapp of all interviewers.
I know. Yeah, I thought that was really cool. And that made me laugh 100%. But then it is interesting to see the way decisions get made and what leads to what, of kind of the pendulum swing of what you want in a coach, what you want, and the fact that Raheem, we've seen he's a great coach. We've seen what he's done, around the league, but he was 32. That's crazy.
And he was very much what you'd call a player's coach.
Yep. And he
was their friends.
The way they were all young, and there just wasn't as much discipline as everybody thought.
It was clear.
And then they went for extreme discipline.
Yep.
The pendulum swung to the other side, and I mean, man, it was crazy to watch the footage of the toe. I've heard all about the toes on the line. That's right before I got here, but I had heard all about toes on the line. I was always like, what is this even?
Well, and we talked about it in the last episode, and I kind of contrasted Gruden coming in and Schiano coming in, and how Gruden, he kind of declared war on the defense and was not nice, and it worked. Mm-hmm. Whereas Schiano, you see the footage and then you see the players now reacting to it like no, this wasn't going to work.
This isn't working very well. Yeah, and especially you got guys like Rondé. God, like, for him to come back for that one more year and have to transition to safety and to have to learn so much at age 36, that's a lot.
He played pretty well at safety too.
That's incredible. I can't imagine what that was like.
Alternate.
And man, so yeah, this 2012 to 13 era here, I mean, you get Levante. Thinking about that roster, I mean, you had a good roster then of Levante. You got Doug Martin and Vincent Jackson, which, I mean, you know, RIP to both of them. And it was just so crazy looking back and thinking about that and what huge, I mean, talent you had on that roster. And God, I didn't know about this Giants game.
Oh, you didn't know about that?
Kneel down?
Yeah. It was a big deal at the time.
Yeah.
And to me, one of the crazier moments in this whole docuseries is having Greg Schiano on and him still saying he was right. I'm telling you, he's on an island of one right there.
I loved that he just was like, no regrets.
It's just
full send.
He's literally the only person probably in the whole world that thinks he was thinks he was right about that.
Thinks he was I'd do it again.
And you know, I don't know.
I thought that was
even his play. I mean, you could see from all the other, even the footage them talking about, like Gerald talking about it. They didn't agree with him at the time.
Yeah,
they didn't like having to do it.
It's crazy. And then, yeah, we see Rondé retires, and I love they showed part of his Hall of Fame induction. And it's so crazy to me to realize between Levante and Rondé, what a huge chunk of Bucs history those two guys cover, and that they got to overlap for a season.
And Rondé called it passing the torch.
Yeah.
I hadn't really thought about it that way until he said that.
Yeah.
And it's perfect because Rondé was that leader. I mean, they talked about how Schiano was so happy he was back because he was the veteran presence, right?
Yeah.
On a young team. And to have Levante start that year and for Rondé to recognize right away,
this is the next guy.
This is the guy that's going to lead this team. I thought was really cool.
Yeah, and boy, was he right. So yeah, and then we get to the point where we transition from Schiano to Lovie Smith coming in. We get to, I mean, man, I always love this. If Jason Light's first draft pick being Mike Evans, I just don't think there are going to be that many GMs out there that have a better first pick of their careers. Most importantly, we now enter the part of Bucs history that I now have been a part of.
Oh, okay, good. So,
I knew that's what people were really wondering out there. That this is where there should be a bullet point that says, enter Casey Phillips.
You'll have some more heartfelt reactions to the rest. Right?
I actually almost got hired during the Schiano era. I don't know if you even know that. I was very close that
you dodged a bullet.
Almost got hired there, and then and then we came in during the Lovie Smith era, and I will always be very thankful to Lovie. He was very kind to me when I came in, that I had worked for the Rams. I had a coach there who just called him without me asking, told him I was good people, which I so appreciated. And you know how in the NFL world that goes a long way. And Lovie had always said to me right off the bat, he said, if you ever need anything, you better tell me, is everybody treating you right? Are you doing well? And I mean, for me coming in as a first-year reporter, that's very, cool. Very big deal. So I like to say thank you to him for that. But yeah, and then they got into Mike's childhood story, which I've heard it 1,000 times, breaks my heart every time, and makes if you already respect Mike without knowing that story, he would have every reason to have all of your respect of how he plays on the field, the way he does community things. Then you hear this story, and it makes me just love Mike even more and think what an unbelievable person he is to defy the odds to end up where he is. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I knew all the details. I mean, it sounds like you knew the story better than I did. And so I was just kind of watching mouth agape. And Mike, through that part, talking about such things like his uncle killing his father and just kind of matter-of-factly talking about it now. And then he talks about how football kind of like athletics kind of like saved him, essentially. Yeah. And then you see him... You juxtapose the fact, and he's had a lot of time to deal with it now, and he's just trying to tell you the story. You juxtapose the fact that he can go through that story that would so incredibly alter a young person's life, and usually probably in a very bad way, and be able to do it without having an emotional breakdown.
Yeah. And
then you see him at the draft, and he's crying.
Yep.
And that's not to say the draft was more important than what happened to his family, but it was kind of
it felt like a culmination of all of it.
He had gathered his emotions on what happened to him in the past, and then football and sports in general was such an important part of him getting past all of that and becoming somebody in life who's not only a gigantic success but also could give back so much. And And so you see that, and you see how much it mattered when he's crying at the draft.
Yeah, and has his daughter there, and you can see what he knows this means he's going to be able to do for her and give her. And, I always think that everyone goes through things in life. Everybody has painful things happen to them, and it's what do you do with that? How do you respond to it? That is what shapes your life. And to see the way that Mike and his wife both have chosen to give their pain a purpose through their foundation, and the way that they give back to, survivors of domestic violence, and they're helping kids with scholarships. And it's just incredible to see that they found a way to deal with it by trying to help other people in similar situations. And I so commend that. And it's one of the reasons why Bucs fans love him so much. It's not just that he's really fun to watch catch a touchdown. It's because he is a truly remarkable human.
And on a much lighter note at this part, we think about Mike Evans' highlights, and you think of all the catches and the end zone fades. I forgot early in his career how fun the highlights were when he was blocking downfield.
Oh yeah,
and he's a big guy,
big dude, not who you want to see coming.
Demolishing these Falcon cornerbacks. And I was like, I forgot about that. Those were such cool highlights.
So fun, yeah. He really is big, and I love that we got to see a little. I love watching.
Well, he was bigger then.
Right, that's very true. I don't think anyone has changed how they look in the face.
He looks so young.
He had such a baby face. Yeah. And the little chin strap facial hair with the big old cheeks. I love it. I'm here for young Mike. And also his old basketball highlights.
I know.
If people have not watched those, he was a heck of a baller for sure. So yeah, I loved that whole part of it. And I love we got to hear, this is where Malcolm Glazer passes away, and I love how they got to dive into a bit of same thing of trying to use his legacy and the way that he and then now all of his children want to make a difference in the community, hearing about the Glazer Family Foundation, the Glazer Vision Foundation, and all of the things that came from his heart and passion for that. Just the way that his legacy still gets to live on through all of that, I thought was really lovely.
There's two parts there. There's one, it becomes clear from a lot of interviews with players, with just people, that he came off around everybody's very warm and caring.
Yeah.
We saw that in the James Dungy part, but in other little smaller interactions as well. And then also somebody says, and I don't remember who it was, that the Bucs wouldn't be what they are today if Malcolm Glazer hadn't come along.
It's very true. They might not even be in Tampa.
Yeah, that's true too. But I think that's undeniably true.
Yeah.
And what they are is two-time Super Bowl champions who've had a lot of success. And every team has its ups and downs. And there's been some fallow periods, but 2 championships and a lot of playoff appearances and a lot of great players and people going into the Hall of Fame, and the stadium, the team still here, the facility. I do agree that this would not have happened without Malcolm Glazer.
Yep, I would agree with that for sure. And then now entered Jameis getting drafted. I love it.
I was in that house where they show him being drafted.
That's right.
We were hiding in a back hallway because we were with the Bucs.
Yeah.
And if we had been seen,
everyone would have already known.
In fact, that happened a little bit at the airport. We got recognized a little bit at one of the airports, and the person was like, "Why are you? I know why you're here."
Why are you here? Yeah, please don't tell anybody.
So, yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, that is really fun. Yeah, I started here just a few weeks before he got drafted, and it was fun to watch all the cloak and dagger, which is funny because it's still the number 1 pick. It's not like someone's gonna sneak in and take him before you, but you wanted to be sneaky about it. And the first and last pass being a pick six, it's
well,
crazy.
The funny part is who framed that for us in this documentary?
Jameis
himself.
This is what I love about Jameis.
That was the part where I was like, everybody knows that note, and it's kind of funny, even though you don't. It's
I think thankfully now it's been enough years that it's no longer too soon. Like he's able to now be like, well,
yeah,
that's what happened.
The fact that they had him being the one to say it, I thought was kind of hilarious. So you
was.
You kind of forget how fun some of those stretches were during Jameis.
Oh my gosh, he was electric.
I mean, everybody now says it was never dull because he had the picks and the touchdowns, but there were times.
But it was never dull.
Yeah, and there were times where there was all good times, and he was piling up the numbers and running around hitting Mike Evans against Chicago 50 yards downfield.
I remember that.
There was a lot of fun moments during that time.
I would agree with that. So then that also factored into now Dirk Cutter takes over because you wanted that continuity. You wanted to really try to set Jameis up for success as your number 1 overall pick and keeping his offensive coordinator. And
I didn't know the part about Dirk and Jameis at one point having sort of the disagreement over his shoulder.
I didn't either. I thought that was very interesting.
I thought it was all sunny and light between those two.
I did too. And I thought it was really interesting, as we pointed out, of what works and what doesn't work when it comes to calling out players. and that he talked about Dirk calling him out in front of the whole team, and it seemed like that didn't work in that moment, that did not exactly make Jameis endeared to him in that situation.
Jameis did a little bit of himself too. I mean, we get right around that same point, we get the eat a W thing.
He brought on a few things himself. That's very true.
That was not good, but it was actually good because it's funny again now in years removed, and you see that clip, and by far the most hilarious part is the faces in the background.
Deshaun's face.
It's great.
Oh my gosh.
And then Chris saying, "I'm not dapping that guy up. He just had his fingers in his mouth."
Oh my gosh, that made me laugh out loud watching this. Like,
and then
it's great. Yeah, Chris's whole response. I've decided Chris is one of my favorite reactors to things.
He was good, yeah.
And most recently, I remember the video that came out of Chris reacting to hearing that Tez had thought the MVP chance were for him.
So good.
And Chris literally did a knee slap as if he's this old man on a rocking chair, like knee slap. And I'm like, I just want to watch Chris react to things now.
And then Gerald McCoy going, I never said this before, but we came into the locker room and we're like, we're not winning this game.
You know what's funny about it is I've always wondered, I watch all these pregame speeches and I always think to myself, man, like you guys now 17 games of doing this. I'm like, do they really do anything? I've always been curious, like how much impact do they make? And it turns out if you do it wrong, it can make an impact.
Well, a little bit of foreshadowing on your part because we're going to hear later on about Tom Brady
and I
saving
think
a speech for the right moment.
That is what I learned about this documentary. The speeches matter.
And I think it matters how often you do it and when you choose to do it.
Yes, if you do it every week, it's probably going to lose a little luster, but if you savor it.
If Tom Brady's trying to make you believe before the third game of the season that this is like life and death and you're going to be remembered for this, it doesn't hit as hard when he says it at the Super Bowl.
That's very true. And then one of my favorite moments of my entire time of being here. The Fitz magic. It was magic. It was so magical. He's one of my favorite athletes I've ever covered.
Really?
I mean, NFL, NBA, WNBA, all of it. He is in my top 5, I think.
Wow, that's good.
He's so funny. He was so fun to be around. His multicolor minivan he was driving, like it was an what did he call it? Iridescent something. There was some name for the paint color he put on it. Like he was just so interesting. And then coming out in that Deshaun Jackson outfit was one of the top moments in press conference history.
You know what else he would do? He would occasionally throw for 450 yards too.
He would. God.
That Deshaun thing was after the Philadelphia game, which was the second game where he threw for 400 plus yards. The week before the Saints game, I remember that game vividly. That's one of my favorite games of the last 10 years.
Yeah.
48-40, I think it was.
Wild.
He threw for he's throwing these 75-yard touchdown passes to O.J. Howard and Deshaun Jackson. And then at the end, they didn't show it here, but he had to scramble for the first down because the Saints had made a ridiculous comeback. He gave us some pretty fun games.
Some highlights on and off the field for sure. So then now we get to the point where we've moved from Dirk at the end of the 2018 season into the Bruce Arians era. And I loved hearing about all the kind of reasons that this happened, of Ed seeing the all or nothing about him, and then, knowing he already had the relationship with Jameis. And then I didn't realize I think I knew this, but had forgotten that he'd coached Jameis as a kid at a camp.
10-year-old, yeah.
Like, how fun, just all the little connections.
I was thinking back here at this part about how we had the big story about Gruden unpacking the fax machine, and that was the technology at the time that they had to get ready to go. And then you have this part where you have BA texting Jason, because Jason had told, I don't know who it was, one of the owners, I don't know if he would be interested. And then you have BA text him and say, hey, keep me in mind, bro.
Little easier than the fax machine.
Right? But I mean, it just shows you the change in technology but
how
again,
much quicker we could move.
It was kind of cool that it played a part in both cases.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then we get Jason describing the I am that man philosophy. This is kind of where this came in and all of that. And boy, now we have the Brady era, the Operation Shoeless Joe Jackson, which is great. If you build it, he will come. And they had built it. They had built that O-line. They'd built that receiver room. And
so now we're moving on to episode 8.
We are now officially in that era. And man, I
think the best part at the beginning of this was all the cold takes that they had from national media on Tom Brady being done.
Hilarious. I love a good receipt. And so does Jason Light.
Yeah, he does for sure.
Jason Light is the king of receipts. And I love that Twitter account, Freezing Cold Takes. Yeah. Hilarious. And so, this was great. He's washed. He's done. Yeah. Why would anybody sign him?
And I thought when they started talking about Field of Dreams, if you build it, he will come, that maybe this was some storyline that they came up afterwards. But no, it was clearly in the moment. They thought it was funny because they called it Operation Shoeless Joe Jackson.
It's so great. And then by far my favorite moment, John Spytek falling into the bush after maybe having a few drinks and being so happy that Brady was coming, and they now call it the Brady Bush because it is still doesn't look quite like the rest of them.
I assume that was ring cam
footage.
It was,
yeah.
And so that means that John was willing. They asked him for that footage. He's like, okay.
I love that because he's like, yeah, it got us. Like, this is how we all felt. I loved it. Now here he is a GM, and I just love that he's like, yep, this was me, a little tipsy, falling into the bush with excitement.
I think he said cab, like Cabernet.
Yeah.
I guess was what it means. I don't drink wine, so I don't know. But I wondered if you caught this. BA told Brady that we're going to let you be you. And it just made me think, that's the same thing they said to Baker like 3 years later. Remember that?
So true. Yeah, that's a great point. And it worked out for both of them.
And in both cases, in a very different way.
Yes.
But in both cases, there were skeptics about whether this was the move and whether it was a good fit. And in both cases, Bruce and Jason Light and all of their people, they wanted to make sure these quarterbacks knew, we know how good you are.
Yep.
And we know what type of player you are and how you operate.
Not
and we
want
you to do that.
Anything else. Mm-hmm.
Do that. Come here and do that.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point.
I thought about that immediately when I heard that part.
And I think that's such a key to any quarterback success. Like, confidence, I think, is the most important thing about being a quarterback. Like, you got so much going on. You got to be fully believing in yourself and what's going on, or it's not going to go well. And there's no better way to have confidence than to be told, we want you to be you.
Yeah.
I think that's a great way to set it up. And then, like you said, of letting Tom be himself, I think we got to see even Tom be a version of himself he might not have been in a while, which was one that could have fun, let loose, laugh a little. We had the Tommy and Gronky show. Like, I loved seeing all that of, like, he gets to be rejuvenated and come in here and laugh a little and joke around with his buddy Gronk and other people. And I thought that was really cool.
And then he gets all the guys to go to Berkeley Prep.
Yeah.
How much would you pay to have seen that dunk contest at Berkeley Prep?
Incredible.
They're all these breaking out all these dunks, Gronk and Mike and Chris.
I would have paid so much money to see that. That's such a cool concept.
I wish they had footage of that.
Yeah, that would be some pretty priceless footage. I also loved that the first interaction BA had with Gronk was yelling at him for COVID protocol. I thought that was so funny. Him on the elevator and like what in the true BA fashion. Glad to have
you, Gronk.
Also happy to have you here, but also follow the rules. And I think the fact that BA was so emphatic about those rules was a huge part of our success, that he had said that from the beginning of the year, of the team that beats the virus is going to beat other teams, that you're going to not have as many people out. It's, the way that injuries can derail a season, if they were going to miss games due to protocol and all that kind of stuff, he knew how important that would be. And he was very serious.
He figured that part out.
He did, which was impressive.
I said right from the beginning, the team that beats COVID.
I am also so glad the baby powder made an appearance in the documentary. This was truly one of the funniest things to me. I love that Jensen said it was the first 20 minutes of his first call with
Doesn't
Brady.
Seem like that should take 20 minutes.
But apparently there was a lot of detail being given.
There must have been a lot of Brian going, really?
Yeah. But again, it's Brady, so you just, yes, sir, whatever you
And then
ask.
they include that little evocative scene where you're just looking at the feet in the bathroom and you see the baby powder falling down. You're like, I know what's going on up there.
Yeah. And I remember watching this at practice, and it was so fun, especially once then it became Hainsey, that it was so funny watching, just standing out at practice, and he would just kind of pull his pants out from behind him and dump it behind him standing out of the field. There's just this cloud of baby powder is going everywhere.
You know what worked, man.
Whatever works. You have the kind of success Brady's had, and again, you just, yes, sir, Sergeant, sir, I will dump baby powder down my pants at practice. So funny. So we get into the 2020 season now. I love that. This is something I'll talk to Trent about a little bit when we get to this segment, but the idea of it's sort of the conventional wisdom now in TV and movies that, like, no one really wants to relive the COVID days all that much. And so it was something for them how to decide how much or little to include about that specific part of the time. But I loved that they chose to talk about specifically the New Orleans game and how silent it was, and that you could hear stuff that you could never hear, because that truly was a
each other from the other
direct impact on the game. When you are now hearing these play calls and these conversations you are never supposed to hear. I mean, I think about how these coordinators are even always putting up their play sheets to cover their mouth, and now you can just hear them. Yeah. That was such a wild time.
Eerie.
Yes. And I remember even the fact that Gene talked about this for the radio side. They'd pump in crowd noise to the radio stuff sometimes to, like, try to make it seem more real. It just all felt so dystopian and weird and not normal. So I thought that was an interesting thing that they chose to.
I thought it was kind of cool in the Chicago game where they can laugh about it now, the fourth down. I mean, you could see that being the thing that maybe Tom wouldn't want to talk about.
Yeah.
And I know we tried to skirt it at the time that it happened.
Yeah.
But now, and it's clear from the footage that they got in the interviews that they got that he wasn't alone. And
no.
I don't know how that happens.
I know.
But he wasn't the only guy out there on offense who thought it was third down.
That was so interesting. And I think it's one of those where because we won the Super Bowl, we can laugh at it.
Right.
That
right.
if we had
that
not,
game had derailed everything.
Yeah, then like that probably wouldn't be as funny.
There was clearly, you could tell that there were people who thought this was like where the season was going to go bad.
Yeah.
You know, the turbulence in Tampa, somebody said, and Vita Vea gets hurt, and that was such a big deal.
And to an extent, they were right that there was that mid-season lull, that it was just because we won the Super Bowl, it was not all smooth sailing that whole season, that there was the mid-season lull, there was some of those issues or whatever. But then we
go on, as everybody knows now, come out of the All-Star break.
Yeah, we're in the off season now. Clearly, you've shifted to your baseball.
Right, there you go. The bye week, and it's famous now. Obviously, 8 straight games just killed it from then on. But there really wasn't a whole lot of focus on the 4 games in the regular season that came after that. More of it was on the Kansas City game that was before the bye. And I think it was an underrated part that was really well treated here in this episode, making it clear how much that second half was where the part where Brady had said to, I guess, BA early on in the season, this is maybe going to take 3/4 of the season before it all comes together. And then it was clear that was it, the second half against Kansas City.
Yep.
And there was a loss. And we have all these wins about to come that we could be focusing on. And I think Trent and his people did a great job of choosing that second half to make such a big thing out of it, because it was underrated at the time. And now it's good to learn or to be reminded how important that turning point was in the second half.
Yeah, that Chiefs game was
and
actually
how it all came back around again at
to
the
play
end.
the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. The irony is there for sure. I also really enjoyed the whole part about Leonard Fournette and what led to playoff Lenny. That I loved hearing the different perspectives on it, where you could tell Bruce was like, I'm done. I'm over this. And that some other people like Jason had to step in and be like, just one more conversation, just in case.
There was a great line in here where he's talking about how he didn't like players, and in this case it was Leonard, bitching. And he said, bitching is complaining to someone who can't solve the problem.
I mean,
and I had never heard that before. I'm like,
that's up there with no risk and no biscuit to me.
But it's right on the money.
It is.
It's a great explanation of why you don't like a player who's always bitching about something. Because he's bitching to people that
can't do anything about it.
Come talk to your coach.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Do something about it or stop.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine with BA, BA does not beat around the bush, I think is an easy way to put it. BA is a very straightforward individual.
Like with Gronk in the elevator.
Yes. And BA is a very straightforward individual. I would love to have heard the conversation with him and Lenny. I bet it lasted about 5 seconds, because I think it probably was, as he kind of put it,
wasn't very long.
That he just was like, you're either in or you're out.
Yeah.
And like, I think that was kind of the essence of it. And to Lenny's credit, he said, I'm in, and he was, and playoff Lenny was born. I feel like that's a delightful little story. And yeah, I love it. We kind of closed with the Saints game in the playoffs and seeing it be the end of Drew Brees. And I love that moment of Tom Brady playing catch with his sons. Oh, that was so sweet and lovely. And as much as we are not Saints fans around here, especially the way they let us down at the end of the season, but I will say Drew Brees is someone I have a lot of respect for, the way he played the game, and to see the way that you could tell Brady felt the same, and having that sweet moment with his kids at the end, I thought was very lovely.
I also thought it was cool to hear from several people that they thought the Saints game was the scariest one.
Yeah.
Like, that was the biggest game.
Didn't BA say he thought whoever won that game was going to win it all?
That. Yeah. And we'll never know if that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, if it had gone the other way. But it was true in a way. It was
at least true this direction, which we appreciated. Any last thoughts before we move on here?
Well, again, I love to highlight the at the end in the credits who people chose, and I just thought it was cool that Brady said Mike, which was neat, Mike Evans, and then Gronk deciding it was Allstott.
Yeah,
and I think back, I'm like, okay, that does make a lot of sense.
They seem like kindred spirits. I don't know if they've gotten to spend much time together, but I feel like that's a best friendship that just needed to happen. Yeah. Like the two of them, I'm like,
they should have been on the team at the same time.
They should have played together, because that's a delightful
We would have
duo.
had the Gronky and Mikey show.
That's true. That would have been fun as well. All right. Well, like we do every episode, I got a chance to catch up with director Trent Cooper to hear some of the behind-the-scenes takes from these episodes and what it was like to make them. So let's listen to that. Trent, welcome back in. Thank you again for being here. And these couple episodes, first of all, you cover some time. We got a whole decade here in these couple episodes, and I'm so excited to talk to you about them. And overall, I wanted to hear that of the decision process of when to speed up, when to slow down, where again, you're telling 50 years in 10 episodes, where you're going to average 5 years per episode, if you look at it that way, but knowing sometimes you're going to want to highlight almost just 1 year per episode. Right. How did you make some of those decisions of when to speed up and when to slow down?
I think it's about the rhythm of highs and lows in stories, right? So if things start to feel like a cycle and it feels repetitive, you better speed up. If it's like, same thing happens over again. We hire a coach, blah, blah, blah. We go 2-14. We think we have the answer. We don't have the answer. We got to fire this guy, blah. So that would be an emotional flatline, and we don't want that. So we can compress things like that. If we get into those flatline, we can compress some of that with graphics and headlines and clippings and some of the things that we can do to shrink that stuff down. But when you've got the goods and you've got story underneath those things, all bets are off. So in episode 7, you've got the story of Greg Schiano's era. There's 2 or 3 killer stories in there, and then you get this, from the toes on the line stuff and the thing with going at the guy's knees when the kneel down situation. But more importantly, you're learning that Greg Schiano was a great dude, and he was brought here to bring discipline to a place that sorely needed discipline, and he completely did that. And to this day, we're still reaping some of the benefits of his era, and one of them is Levante David, and Golston. I mean, these were guys that he drafted and helped mold, and there's some amazing stuff that came out of that era. And then also in this episode is the whole Jameis Winston thing, which, by the way, the Jameis Winston experience is as advertised. I mean, you feel all the highs. This guy is spectacular. He can make throws that no one else can make. He's a leader, the likes of which we've never seen. He's got charisma. He's fun. He's energetic. He's young. You can build an entire franchise around this guy, or can you not? I don't know. And it's intoxicating. I would have kept putting money in that slot machine too.
Yeah.
Because he's so close, but it's just the turnovers. And so then we see here comes Bruce Arians, and he is all about accountability, and the turnovers aren't going to work for him.
Mm-hmm. So interesting. And as you mentioned, kind of the documenting the struggles sometimes or the less successful years. Yeah. What are the challenges of that when you're a fan, you're making this for fans? How do you try to tell the stories in the lower times? What's the strategy there? If you don't want to just gloss over things, because I feel like that is such a credibility thing for documentaries, right? The people watching want to feel like you're telling the real, true story. They don't want to think that you're sugarcoating things.
Right.
So what is the strategy for those lesser times where, you don't want to focus on it too much because, like you said, you don't want it to flatline? What was kind of your thought there?
I think we love the low times. We need them. We need so that you feel the high times. You're not going to feel as much when Arians and Brady and Evans and all of them turn it around. You're not going to feel that as high if the lows aren't as low. And then again, it always comes back to story. So if there's story behind the low times, you're good. If we're just showing a bunch of interceptions and fumbles, I'm taking a nap. But if we're going inside that and we're seeing, Jameis is very revealing. And some of the things he was going through with Coach Cutter, it's very human. It's very vulnerable. It's very real, and I think our audience is going to love hearing that. But these 2 episodes also cover Here Comes Tom Brady. And you talk about the emotional swing. I mean, my God.
Yeah.
It's Tom Brady.
Yeah. So true.
And then you get to hear what was happening in the building as they were trying to get him. And it's just they're just guys, Jason Light and John Spite, they're just dudes working hard, having fun, trying to do the best they can. And they're just so revealing about how they went about it, what they did, all the code words they used, and it feels like it would be fun to work here, right?
Yeah.
It'd be fun to work for those guys.
Yep.
And to be in the room with them when they're hatching these plans and going for it. And you could also tell how much they love each other. Like Spytek and Jason, very cool. And then of course, BA is like, he's like, I don't know. I put him on the Mount Rushmore of coaches. Like, he's just got it all, man. He's got the cool factor. He motivates people.
Yep.
He knows the game so well. He doesn't put up with any BS. Like, and he was the right guy at the right time to make all this go. And he totally did it. As
we talked about, the episode before this, we were like, you had some personalities at your disposal.
Yeah.
Well, now again, you jump right in. Jameis and BA, tell me what it's like to interview those two guys.
I mean, gosh, Jameis, I was excited because I knew we were going to be in for a ride. This was right after last year's Super Bowl, where he was all over. Remember, Jameis was
he was covering everything, running all over.
He was
New
like
Orleans
a broadcaster
at
the Super Bowl, and we got him like he flew home from the Super Bowl and came to us. So I'm like, he's tuned in. He's it's vintage Jameis here.
Yep.
But he was super vulnerable, and I think what was interesting for me is, I understood after spending a couple hours with them, I understood why these guys want to follow him. No one will talk bad about Jameis. Mike Evans, Levante, Chris, Jameis is their guy. They want to follow him. They root for him. They love him. They still talk to him all the time. Mm-hmm. He's just a leader. And it was kind of cool to learn about, and we didn't talk about it in the film, but I remember him telling me his relationship with Doug Williams is really interesting. They always find time for each other. Mm. And when there would be a time where, they work for different teams and stuff, they always, they get together for lunch and dinner. And there's something about those two that I find to be very similar. They're both winners, mm-hmm. and they're both leaders.
Yep.
And it's cool that Doug's in our DNA, and he was there he was always there for Jameis in a cool way. I thought that was interesting.
I imagine we talked about the challenges or, sometimes cool parts of telling the earliest parts. It's so long ago in memory of what that means. This is sort of the opposite end of the spectrum of now these final episodes are really such recent history.
Right.
And so how do you try to tell the story in a way that when it is so recent, you don't have as much of the chance for fans to be like, oh, I forgot about that, because it's so recent. So what was the strategy on this side? Well,
we did a couple things. We wanted there to be a completely different visual language and editing style, because you just saw this stuff, right? So by design, we got the scraps from the broadcast cameras. So if you imagine when you're shooting the Super Bowl or the NFC Championship with or any big game, what if there's 20 cameras? Mm-hmm. And, we all know there's a truck somewhere and someone's going camera 6, camera 8, and they're it's called the line cut. They're cutting just the best stuff. Well, what's happening to all the other stuff? What's the moment where camera 19 doesn't have a shot? Oh wait, I'm gonna zoom in on Gronk. Okay, now I have a shot. I'm ready, and then they take the Gronk shot. Mm-hmm. I want the zoom to Gronk, and then I'm gonna put like sound design under it. And it's going to be like, and it's going to take you right. So we try to create all sorts of emotion and tension with the scraps from broadcast. I thought that was interesting.
That is cool.
But also, like, it still comes back to what was happening beneath all the things we were seeing on TV. And we get to learn a lot about what was happening behind all those things we just saw 3 years ago.
And then I think about, you mentioned, it's, Tom Brady and what it meant to the franchise and this dawning of this kind of new day and the way you tell that. But then there's also the COVID side. And to me, these are just two of the most unique storylines for all of sports and they're coming together at the same time of Brady for the first time ever not being a Patriot. And then also dealing with it during COVID. What was the way you wanted to try to tell the COVID story and how it played a part in all the other stories you were telling?
So it started with not wanting to tell the COVID story.
I've heard that's sort of the conventional wisdom almost in...
Don't do it.
Yeah, no one wants to see it anymore, that you're bringing this up. I've heard this. I wondered if you agreed.
No one wants to see masks. Yeah. No one wants to see empty stadiums. They don't want to say, oh, we had to get tested and swabbed and vaccine. Like, we're just done. We're over it, right? But then we started working on this, and we're like, you know what? There's something really unique that happens to football.
Yeah, it affected it. It was a huge part of the storyline.
Yeah, when you don't have fans in the stadium, it's haunting. And also, like, Chris Godwin says it very well. He's like, you're hearing things you're not supposed to hear.
Yeah.
Like, I can hear the conversation on the Saints sidelines, and it's kind of trippy.
Yep.
I'm kind of listening. Well, I shouldn't be hearing this, but at the same time, it's like getting in my head. Like, it's haunting. So that's a story. That's interesting. There's also things like, you see the cardboard cutouts and things like, it's just surreal. It's like you're in a alternate reality.
Yeah.
So there's a piece of me that came back around to, we got to do this. And then I think that one of the things I love, it's not in this episode, so I don't want to talk about it, but it's the COVID impact on the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I think is really interesting.
I agree with that. Well, and to your point about maybe right now the mindset is we don't want to necessarily have to go back and relive that. But I imagine you're also creating this for posterity, right?
Yeah.
Like, the idea is that people are watching this documentary around the 75th anniversary of the team and the 100th of, like, looking back at these early years, that even how we feel right now, it is going to be fascinating to people who are of a generation that didn't live it. And so I can understand why you'd feel like you need to include that.
Yeah. And you will find this content and consume this content whenever you are ready for it. So, and that's the beautiful thing about these streaming platforms. It's just sitting there waiting for us, right? So 6 years from now, it might be I just get around to watch it.
Yeah.
We hope you're watching it tonight.
Yeah.
But we hope you watch it tonight, and then 5-6 years from now, you watch it again, because you're going to relive and experience. Part of the fun of this is you put yourself back in these moments, and you don't even realize you're doing it. But you're like, God, I remember being at that game. I remember sitting at the bar with my friends and in that moment and yelling and screaming. I remember throwing my pillow at the TV. Like, I remember being with my dad in that moment, and he's no longer with us. Like, there's just so much living that happens to you as a fan around this team. And this team keeps bringing us back together. And I think that this project will help you connect with your own personal life, what you were going through when you see these. That's been the experience for some of my friends that have gotten a sneak peek. They're like, I remember we went to that game, and I remember sitting in the stands and grabbing you, and oh my God, like it's a different layer of this that's super cool.
And then you mentioned the look and the feel. We talked in an earlier episode kind of about the lighting, the sets, your choices there. How did it change and evolve over the course of these different episodes and eras? Did you try to have things visually feel a little different, or did that naturally happen just to even the idea of the quality of the footage you have and where it's coming from? How did you work with that over this massive amount of time?
The interviews don't change. The interviews have a style, and that's consistent. The archival footage changes. So you're talking about in the 70s, it's all shot on film. It's grainy. It's got a certain texture. It's a richness. By the time we get to this era, it's all digital. It's crisp, and so there's that. And then there's this other little thing that we do. It's sort of unique to us. Is I've fallen in love with 8mm photography. So this is you saw a lot of it in it. You might have not have realized that that's not old stuff. That's stuff we just shot. But it's shot with the old cameras. So we use cameras that are 50, 60 years old, and these cameras have been completely renovated, or what's the term, restored, and we're actually shooting film, and we have to send it away and get it developed, and it's a very, when you do it right, it looks like your uncle shot it. Like, we don't make it look too pretty. It's supposed to, the exposure's a little off, and it's a little messy, because you want the grit.
Yeah.
You want it to feel that way.
Organic feeling.
Yeah. So I'm doing a ton of that. And then the big choice is, do you do that in the modern era? Because I'm so in love with that 8mm photography. Does it make sense to do that? Do I want an 8mm shot of Mike Evans? I don't know. Maybe I do.
Yeah.
So, like, if you'll see this in the next episode when we go to the boxing ring with Mike, we shot all that with 8mm, and it just gives you a different texture. So
that's awesome. All right. Well, like I said, we got one more to go.
One more.
The final podcast episode covering the final 2 episodes of the documentary, which I cannot wait to see. So Trent, thank you again so much for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you again to Trent Cooper for spending some time with us talking about it. Always cool to hear about. Any final thoughts from you before we move on to our final segment?
I love that BA had nothing with him when he came to his interview for the head coaching job. And Jason's like, most guys have binders and they're going to go through hours of how they're going to write anything. And B's just like, it's all up here.
It's incredible.
And then
such a baller move.
Yeah, it really was. and then Levante saying it was Derek Brooks who was his number 1 Buck of all time. And I just thought back about how a lot of the guys like Derek Brooks and Warren Sapp would say Leroy Selman. And it's the guys that came right before you. In Levante's case, that was Derek Brooks. And then you think about how important it was for Levante. We found out that he was chasing that Derek Brooks tackle record at the end of this season. So and cool. And he thinks that Derek Brooks is the greatest of all time. And so chasing one of his records, that's a big deal to him.
And what does that mean when you tied him?
Who
you consider awesome. The greatest of all time? It's pretty cool. And as of the recording of this podcast, we do not know about Levante's future yet. No announcement has been made.
Obviously, we always love to have him back.
We would like him to play until he's 75, but we haven't heard yet if this was it. To tie is, again, it's like a movie.
A lot of people were upset about that. I thought it was perfect.
I think it's amazing. I think it's truly, because both of them are so beloved, are so wonderful, on and off the field. I kind of love that it's a tie.
It's perfect.
If there was a reason to root for one of them over the other, then maybe. But
but there's not.
There's not. They're both amazing pillars of the community, pillars of this franchise.
14 seasons each, all with the Buccaneers.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful. I think it's just like the football gods were just like, here you go. Here's this one last tackle.
6 tackles.
Enjoy that. Yep, on the money. All right. So now, like we do each episode as well, wanted to play a little bit of one of the clips from the Raise the Flags premiere that happened at Tampa Theater a few months ago for people who weren't able to be there. So looking at the different panels that happened and what happened in this episode, wanted to show a quick clip from the panel I did with Tom Brady. Now, I know we have not quite gotten to the actual winning of the Super Bowl. That'll be in our next episode, but had to talk to him about the trophy toss, right? I mean, it's just, especially because he got to walk out on stage holding the trophy, and we were talking about that. So we wanted to make sure everybody got to hear a little bit of his thoughts on the trophy toss. Now, you completed thousands and thousands and thousands of passes in your career. Where does the completion of throwing this bad boy rank in all of those?
Absolutely the most dangerous pass in my career. And I've thrown into triple coverage, but can you see how sharp that edge is? And I just imagine, because I can't imagine, Tanner Hudson and Cam and Gronk and everybody on the other side of the boat had any less to drink than I did. So the thought seemed like, no, I won't do that. But then an hour in, they kept going, Tommy, throw it. And I was like, no. And then at some point, it sounded like a good idea. So I had it, and I was kind of like, should I really do it? And then they could see it in my eyes that I really wanted to throw it. And as the thing's midair, I'm just keep thinking, I hope this doesn't slip through their hands and have one of these clip someone right in the face, because that would have been pretty nasty. The fortunate part was it was like throwing into the game when we were kids, 3 flies up. You throw it nice and high in the air, and then there's all those arms up in the air, and it just kind of landed miraculously right in Cam and Tanner's hands, and ended up being a great completion that day.
Yes, it did. Loved hearing his version of all of this. I mean, one of the most fun. I think it makes sense. This was even what they opened the whole documentary with, of the cold open at the very beginning. And I loved the way they told, the story. We're going to get to the official full telling of it in these final episodes here. But loved hearing his version of why he suddenly was like, oh my gosh, this thing could take someone's eye out. It felt like that Christmas Story movie. That'll take your eye out.
I think my favorite part was at one point, he's like, this is a bad idea. I'm not going to do this. And then an hour later, it seems like a good idea.
It's amazing how that works. The more
I wonder why.
you've had to drink, the things that what's a good and bad idea, it gets a little blurry.
There's nobody on that other boat going, no, this is not a good idea. Yeah. The only person who had her head about her was his daughter, apparently.
I'm like, I want to bet on her in life. She's got some good sense about her. We actually have like the iconic photo that our team photographer, Kyle Zedeker, took. It's in our hallways here at the building. Every time I walk past it, I love to look at it and look at each person's face in the moment it got captured, where that trophy's already in midair and inverted, and you can see his daughter going. It's just my favorite. So, all right, that is going to do it for us on this episode of the Raise the Flags reaction show, which means we only have one more.
But it's going to have the Super Bowl in it.
It's got the second Super Bowl in it, and we are going to cover episodes 9 and 10. It's going to go from that Super Bowl up to present day. So make sure you watch those episodes and then come back here and join us for our final episode.